All right, welcome back to my prison series. This is episode 70. This is literally part 2 of episode 69 about prison food. We are going to get into talking about more of what these people are eating, but in this article is from 2022, and they was like, I wouldn't even feed this prison food to my dog. They said the inhuman reality of prison food. Everyone knows prison food is bad, but it's even worse than you think. And the damage it does to incarcerated people's health lingers long after they've served their time. And I'm going to show you a photo of a pre-made breakfast of Rice Krispies and peanut butter at Anaheim Police Department Jail in Anaheim, California. It was taken back in 2015, and this is pretty much what this person had to eat. Okay, so, and those of you who are new to my channel, don't forget to like the video, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get back into it. So prison food in the United States is public health and human rights crisis. Okay, so they weaponize the experience of eating. The state transforms one of our most basic needs into an everyday form of violence. The short and long-term effects of poor food conditions on incarcerated individuals' health also constitutes a form of premature death, oftentimes damaging a person's physical and mental health as well. For the rest of their life in this episode, basically, it's cruel, people. Let's just put it that way. Incarcerated people are malnourished and fed barely enough to survive on, So, we are going to skim through this article because it is a long article, but we only want to get bits and pieces to talk about the bad food in prison. Basically, that's the moral of that's the moral of this video. Okay, so, again, skimming through. We're reminding you that the lack of nutritional value in the stuff these people are eating, people. Okay? So, they said we're going to talk about Maryland State Prison. Okay, so the state allocated about $3.83 for one person for all 3 meals in a day. So that comes out to like $1.27 per person's meal, which is absurdly low. And that's on average. So, basically, that's about, I guess they're trying to say that's 80 cents per meal, which is $2.40 for all meals. I guess they're doing more calculations. Okay, so that's a small food budget, people. People say, I wouldn't even feed this to my dog or pet whom I love, but this is what people are being given to eat, people. And it was like, I just really want to center that prison food is inhuman. It's more than just a question of poor nutritional value. It's really a human right and public health crisis too. Okay, so what they're actually saying, but let's look at what industry supplies the food for prisoners. And the main food, the foods that are supposed to have nutritional value, such as bread, milk, eggs, and meats and vegetables. From your observation, okay, so what industry supplies this food? Okay, another person is speaking, and they're like, so prison food service is kind of run differently throughout the U.S. A lot of states fully prioritize their food operation to companies like RMAC, the one I talked about in prison episode number 69, Crystals, Trinity, etc. So Maryland actually is fully self-operated, which means that these companies aren't the main source of food provisions. The state of Maryland itself is responsible. The state of Maryland, they have a contract with these different companies for specific items. For example, there was like, I have a list here, and again, this is from a few years back prior to COVID, so things might have changed. But Dory Foods, Hill Foods, Shando Foods for milk, most of the food, if not actually the vast majority, if not all of produce, is fully canned. So they're just trying to say that's the difference too. It's not, nothing is fresh. So your health is not going to be as vital and as great as it could be, people. So a lot of the produce is coming in really of D and F grade quality. And then something else just to touch on when we're talking about meats, and this is written into Maryland state law. There is an arm of DPSCS called MCE, or Maryland Correctional Enterprises, which is when you think of prison labor on the inside, it's housed at Maryland Correctional Enterprises. And each state kind of has this arm. One of the items that Maryland Correctional Enterprises, or one of the activities they engage in, other than having folks make furniture and license plates and road signs and print shops, is also meat production. Okay, so all of the meat that's processed then sold to every single Maryland state prison comes through MCE, which uses incarcerated labor, and the quality of that meat is just horrendous. People call it slob. They call it dog food. They call it mystery meat. I think I heard a lot of them calling it mystery meat. Sounds awful, right, people? It's really inedible, and prisons are continually by state law. I don't know what he's trying to say there. Okay, so they're just trying to say that there's this company, Trinity, Crystal, blah, blah, blah. I guess it goes back to him just restating how inhuman the food is. And then the next person said that was an interesting point of view because they was incarcerated in Maryland and worked for MCE. And they was like, I was pressing tags, but I remember when they privatized, I remember when they got where they took an absorbed food contract. And as you say, I was in the Supermax, and that's when they had a contract with a different agency. And we're talking about $1 meal. It seemed like they were trying to see how they could give us 25 cents for all 3 meals, because we were getting a lot of processed food. We were getting a lot of bulk food. We were getting a lot of beans. We were getting a lot of mystery meats, and we're getting a lot of soups that were unidentifiable. But let's stay on this course about the foods that were given to the prisoners in the Maryland system. And we're recognized that MCE is the major source of supplying the meats and the meat products. And we know that they're making a multi-million-dollar corporation because, like you say, they're also involved with all industries within the Maryland prison system. But in terms of the dietary department, who oversees the serving of the food and as far as the processing of food? While we recognize that poor food is coming in, but then when it's being prepared, who's responsible for oversight on the preparation of the food? Okay, so there's a few different regulatory bodies and then correctional associations that come together for the oversight inspection. So the state had a statewide dietary service manager that oversaw dietary for all prisons. But within that, each region of Maryland also had its own regional dietary services manager. At least in theory, there's a lot of staff shortages. But the nutritional standards that prisoners use to determine what they should serve come through Code of Maryland regulations, as well as the Maryland Commission of Correctional Standards. And that's on the regulatory side. But those standards are just so incredibly vague. All they say is nutritionally adequate meal or well-balanced meal. And it's really sad, right, people? But this is what they're going through. And if you're new to my channel, don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. and hit the notification bell so you can be notified whenever I upload, people. Okay, so they said what they do is they just say you have a well-balanced nutritional meal. Okay. I'm skimming through. Okay, so it says they just have so much power over what food in their facility looks like. And in some places like Baltimore, there's one central facility that has a kitchen, MTC, that creates food or prepares food and then ships it out to 5 or 6 other prisons in the city. So we have state regulations, we have wardens, we have these service manuals, and then we have these associations like the American Correctional Association that has guidelines around what food service on the inside should be, and then prisons adopt these guidelines. Okay. Okay, so these guidelines, they're written by former correctional folks. All right, so many of the prisons in Maryland that we've been into and seen have cockroaches, rats, insects in the kitchen. They receive 98% approval rating from ACA, which is nonsense. And then in terms of oversight, especially, supposedly local and state health departments come in to do very infrequent inspections. The thing is, those inspections are voiced very far in advance, and then on top of that, there's no real power to do anything other than maybe like some type of loose mandate. Okay, so it's really just vague and unenforceable on almost every single level in terms of how prison food is actually governed. Okay, so this person was like, they want to elaborate on the dietary department because they know when they was incarcerated, they had a 5-cycle menu. On the menu, they had portion size. And according to them, in theory, the portion size was representative of a nutritionally balanced diet. From your observation and your investigation, how does this play out? Are prisoners, in fact, given a nutritionally balanced diet on a daily basis? Are they being given 3 nutritionally balanced meals per day? That's what that person wants to know. And then the next person was like, I can't stress enough of how nutritionally bankrupt all of these meals are. So I think we can look at what's written on paper, and even if that's nutritionally adequate, which a lot of times is not, what happens in practice is if you look at what's on the plate as you're sharing as well, the biggest category of food items that's going to be on a tray, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or bag meals, etc., is going to be starch. So pastas, rice, potatoes, just all carbs to fill people up. And then on top of that, whatever is remaining, maybe you have canned produce or supposed to be 4 ounces. It's definitely less than 4 ounces, and the quality of that produce is just really poor. So for those of you who have not been to jail or prison, what they're saying is, the majority of the food you get is going to be canned, and the majority of the food on your plate is going to be something starchy, something like rice, and you won't really get vegetables. And if you did, you're lucky to get sauerkraut. That's what someone said on the last video I did. And then you have to eat and intake food that had roaches, rats, mice, other insects working in the kitchen. And then there's no saying what people have done to your food and who's making it, because they said in a previous video I did that people like to play games about like putting stuff in your food because they find it fun. So the day you eat is the day you want to know who cooks your food. That's what they said on another video. So it sounds like a lot of games. This must be what P. Diddy is going through, right? So you have meats from MCE or some type of protein, but the vast majority of the food you're given in terms of, as we were talking about, quantity, which is, again, people are saying it's not even enough to feed a child, much less a grown person. is that the health impacts, which I think we'll talk about in a little bit too, of receiving such nutritionally inadequate meals means that a person who's leaving incarceration is going to be in much worse health, likely to be in much worse health than when they entered because of how nutritionally insufficient these meals are. And I think just to end on this, to go back to what I was saying in the beginning, the goal of food service on the inside is not to say how do we make sure a person is physically, emotionally, and spiritually nourished through food. It's really how do we just keep you alive on as cheap of a budget as possible. Oh wow. And because the food is just hyper processed, just hyper industrialized, the food items that you do get a lot of times are also spoiled, rotten, and moldy, or the list goes on and on. So the nutritional value in conjunction with how the food is stored and prepared means people can barely eat what's on their tray. And people are just eating to survive, which is why folks turn to commissary, which is also so exploitative too. And the next person is like, right, and to go back to your point about food being spoiled and who they contract with, I remember Cloverland, which was supplying milk, like 60% of the milk that came in was spoiled. And when they served it on the line, every fourth person was like, man, my milk is sour. And then they pulled the milk off the line, bring in another, and it becomes the same process. See, they don't care, people. Who knew they were giving prisoners sour milk? None of us knew until you go to prison, and then you realize you took for granted regular food. Just milk. Milk is not something I crave, but just to know that you can't even have stuff that you would normally have, it's sad. It's upsetting. The next person said, there's such a long list, and I think I'll share this with y'all too, but we put out this report in the fall of 2021. This 6-part report that talks about each aspect of eating on the inside. And there's an entire section that's focused on prison food as a form of violence, dehumanization, and punishment. So I think for folks who want to learn more, I want to bring that up. There are so many ways that food is used as punishment. We can divide it into sanctioned and as what's written on the rules versus unsanctioned too. If you look at Komar, one of the opening lines is food should not be used as punishment on the inside. It's written in the regulations, and that doesn't mean that that's actually happening. So for example, okay, I'm just trying to think of where to start. One is, let's say, movement. So much of the food is inedible. When there are rare, fresh produced items, and if you try to take something from the kitchen back to your cell, the punishment, if you're stopped by a CO, can range from being strip searched to being thrown in solitary confinement. To not receive a meal the next day, especially if you're being fed in your cells like folks are during COVID. Okay, so look, again, if you are caught by a CO, caught sneaking food, they said that you will be strip searched, you will be thrown in solitary confinement, or you might not receive a meal the next day. Okay, people, it's just what you will go through. Okay, so another one is using food as a form of retribution. So let's say you receive a bad meal or a spoiled milk, and you write up a grievance against the CO who served it to you, and you said so, and so did this. I'm not getting actual nutrition or food that's edible. That CO might withhold food from the whole tier for some time or play around with meal times and serve food much later than when it should. So your gaps are like 14 to 20 hours from one meal to the next, or they might not serve you specifically. Or if they send you to solitary for any reason at all, they might not give you food in solitary itself. Okay, so again, if they send you to solitary, they might not give you food. Note that, people. Or they might give you a bag lunch or just food of considerably lower value. Mr. Fox wants me. Okay, so hold on a second. Gotta get the fox. Come here, baby. Come here. Come here, baby. Come here. Baby. Baby. Boy. Baby. Mr. Fox is here. This the baby. Hi, Mr. Fox. Hi, baby. Okay, so look. So, people, don't act up, because if you act up, they might not give you any food at all. Just saying. Okay, and that's a good observation, because I know that when they have incidents where they lock the jails down, I've been in one jail where they locked it down for 9 months. We were fed bag lunches 3 times a day, and there was no way in the bag lunch was any equivalent of nutritionally balanced diet. And the number one thing that was given that had any nutritional value was when they offered fresh fruit. But let's examine the health factors associated with the prison industrial complex and this bad food that's being served in prison. Talk about health problems that come out. The prisoners suffer from eating bad food while they're in and when they're released. So yeah, I think one thing that we're really trying to center, even when we talk about punishment, a lot of folks say all of the food is punishment. Just eating on the inside is punishment. Is that food, prison food, is not defined again by its capacity to feed someone or nourish someone, but it's really defined by its capacity to kill you or to contribute to premature death, because as they were saying, a person who's leaving prison is most likely going to be in worse health than when they came in. And a lot of that is because of the food. That's something to know, right, people? So we're talking about physical conditions. There's such a long list of abuse, and that folks have shared, for example, acid reflux and indigestion. Because folks have such a short amount of time to eat, people are scarfing food down. In cases, COs take the food and throw it in the trash. So people are vomiting after, and they just can't keep it down in any form or shape. That's sad when you have to hurry up, like, I'm trying to say, like, because you need the food, you need to feel full, because you got to get rid of that hunger. You don't want to be hungry, people. Okay. Another is constipation or diarrhea. When you come in, just the shock to the system that prison food induces means that your bowel movements are just so irregular or inconsistent for weeks on end. We can also talk about diabetes, chronic heart conditions, hypertensions. There's a person on the inside who we're working to get out. His name is Mr. Williams. He developed ulcerative colitis because of prison food, and their treatment of him was just so inhuman that he needed a walker to get around, and they took away his walker. And he had ulcerative, I don't know, some disease, which meant that he had no control over his bowels because of what prison food did to him. Other folks have developed hepatitis B on the inside from eating food that was contaminated with fecal matter. People are finding cockroaches, maggots, rat droppings, not just in the kitchen, but in the trays themselves. And the health impact of this is obviously obscene. People are also developing cysts. The other side of this is, as you touch on in the beginning, are the mental impacts. The food is creating depression, creating anxiety. It's leading to dramatic weight gain or weight loss, especially when people are locked in their cell for 23 hours a day. People are just eating to eat. And that kind of exacerbation, already depressive environment, they're trying to say, of being incarcerated by yourself for so long and having 1 or 2 hours to leave, is detrimental. And then I'm skimming through. Okay. So this person said when they got a physical, they had found out they had hepatitis B, high blood pressure, cholesterol, and diabetes. This is when they was in prison. Okay, so now they said, mind you, they was in good physical shape, always running in the yard, but was only when they was made aware of these things when they got that physical. When it comes to food, is a lot of prisoners have died from it. That's what this person is saying. But let's take us to society when a prisoner comes out. How much does it cost when a prisoner comes out to help him or her to resolve health problems that they acquired while being in prison? Have you guys looked that up? That's what they said. Okay, next person said, great question. I think the answer is we don't know. I think as a society, we don't know what the health impacts are. So I think one thing that we talk about a lot is that it's the same neighborhood in Baltimore, for example, that hyper-incarceration exists. Okay, so the same people who are denied access to fresh, wholesome, nutritious food on the outside are being cycled between the spaces between prison and their home neighborhood. So food in both cases is used as a form of oppression. It extends far beyond the walls. So when people are coming home to, as we know, just a deep oppressive healthcare system too, we don't know what the toll really is on people's bodies and mind, and on caregivers. The average length of incarceration in Maryland is about 7 years, and the studies show that even 1 or 2 years of being incarcerated takes away a certain amount of time from your life expectancy. So people, again, are being cycled through both of these spaces. We don't know what the true impact of the violence of prison food or the violence of eating under food really is, but the two systems work in conjunction to really deprive someone of their mental health, their physical health, and their emotional and spiritual health too. And then this person said, what's your last words on this? To give us your information with how I can contact you. The person wants to contact them about this. And then the person said, let's see, I'm skimming through. They're not saying much there, but I guess the moral, people, is that the food in prison is immoral. It's violence. It's very sad that they're saying it's inhuman, because basically no one should have to go through this. And I didn't know the prison food was so bad until reading this article. It's worse than we thought, that you could end up with a disease just from eating prison food. It's all sad just hearing about it, because first of all, everybody in prison is not, a bad person. And some people are incarcerated for a crime they didn't even do. That's another factor. But that's all I have for you on this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you on the next episode.